Hmm.
Okay, you're live now.
We're waiting on additional number here. Let's just wait another moment and then I'll call the meeting to order.
For those in the audience, we're just taking a moment. We're waiting for a council member. We're calling to see if he will be able to attend the meeting. So we're going to go ahead and wait a few moments. So the meeting has not yet been called to order at this time. Councilmember Veros will be logging in shortly.
Great.
And Lisa, the individual that you have participating, I don't see him in the audience.
I do not either. So it could have been that he was not able to join us, which is fine. I was just going to introduce him.
Okay.
If he joins, I'll see it, but we're fine.
Okay.
Thank you, Christina.
Mhm. And just another update for those in the audience, we're just waiting for a council member to log in and should be logging in shortly. And then we'll go ahead and call the policy committee meeting to order at that time.
We're getting closer.
Almost there.
Hey, I'm very sorry. I thought it is. We are live already?
We are, yes, we are live. We have 4 people in the audience at this time.
Okay, I'm very sorry. For some reason, I thought it is 5 o'clock. My alarm set to 5 o'clock. Sorry for that. Okay.
We have not yet called the meeting to order, so when you're ready, Councilmember Veros.
Okay, give me a couple of minutes. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to City Policy Committee meeting of September 22nd, 2021. I'm calling the meeting to order at 4:19 p.m. Madam Clerk, please go ahead and read meeting minute or meeting procedures, please.
Thank you, Chair Veros. Governor Newsom's executive order pertaining to the Brown Act currently remain in effect, allowing public meetings like this to be held by teleconference to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. At this time, I will conduct a roll and ask the chair to recognize me afterwards to confirm certain matters for the record. Vice Chair Armstrong.
Present.
And Chair Veros.
Present.
Thank you. Based on the responses to roll call, the record should reflect that all committee members can hear the proceedings clearly. If there are no objections, the record will further reflect that each committee member believes, based on voice or facial recognition or otherwise, that the persons representing themselves to be committee members are in fact committee members. No objection, Chair Veros. Thank you. Seeing no objection, I will turn the meeting back over to the chair with a reminder that all votes must be taken by roll call.
Thank you. Now I'll open our public comment. Madam Clerk, any public comment, please?
Yes, for those in the audience that would like to make or to have public comment, please use the raise your hand or *9 on your telephone at this time. We do have one request to speak from call-in user 1.
Okay. Call-in user 1, please go ahead. I think you're already promoted.
Hello, Chair Rose and Vice Chair Armstrong. I am speaking on behalf of the teen citizens of our city. Yesterday, I sat in for the first time at the teen council meeting, and I was quite appalled that particular meeting really doesn't serve our teens. They serve the interest adults or activist adults, if you will. And the teens, I almost felt like the teen councils, I almost felt like they were puppets of those adults. I'm not sure exactly what was your objective when this committee started, and I believe it's before both of your time, because both of you just recently got elected. So I'm wondering, what is the purpose of the teen council? And if, in my opinion, it should serve our teen citizens and to help them understand how government works. And then, of course, we're training future, talents or calibers to become our leaders. However, I think that in a democracy, the government doesn't work if there is no public. So at this time, the teen councils really don't have their peer public. They're essentially appointed elitists of their group. And I really don't think that, it defeats the purpose of having this branch in our government if it doesn't serve their peers, which is our future democratic public. So please consider making sure that every time the meeting agenda notices go out through the school district to their peers, and to invite them to, especially now it's all Zoom, to log online to participate instead of just having adults participating. Thank you.
Looks like that's the only user we have. Call user one, only one call. Okay. Thank you. Then we can go ahead and close the public comment. Next, item number 3, approval of minutes. Item 3.1, policy committee regular meeting, May 26, 2021, 4 p.m. Vice Chair Armstrong, any feedback?
No, I'll move to accept the minutes of the policy committee regular meeting from May 26, 2021.
Cool. Thank you. I second it. Moved and second. Any further discussion? Nothing. Okay. So let's go for voting.
Thank you. Chair Barros
Yes.
and Vice Chair Armstrong.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes 2-0.
Thank you. Next, item 4, unfinished business. I don't see any items there. So with that, we can go to the next one. That is item 5, new businesses. New business, item 5.1, South County Innovate 680 shared micro mobility pilot between Contra Costa Transportation Authority and the City of San Ramon. Status update by Public Works Director Maria Feiner.
Good afternoon. Lisa will be doing the presentation at this time. Thank you.
Sorry for that. Thank you.
That's okay. Well, good afternoon, Vice Chair Varos, and I'm sorry, good afternoon, Chair Varos and Vice Chair Armstrong. The item before you this afternoon is an update on the Contra Costa Transportation Authority Mobility on Demand Pilot Bike Share Program. Last November, we actually came before the policy committee. Peter Engel, who's the director of programs at the Transportation Authority, and I presented the Mobility on Demand pilot project. And we were encouraged by the policy committee and the city council to proceed with the project. And so I'm here before you this afternoon to provide you with the status update. Thank you, Christina. There is a PowerPoint presentation that has been prepared. So in April of 2019, the Contra Costa Transportation Authority was awarded a $8 million Advanced Transportation and Congestion Management Technologies Deployment, or ATCMTD grant. That's a mouthful. So that grant was awarded to the Transportation Authority to help implement the Bay Area Mobility on Demand project, specifically here in Contra Costa County. Mobility on Demand is a larger regional project that's being implemented by MTC, and each county is doing their part to implement different components of the Mobility on Demand project. So the Transportation Authority's Mobility on Demand project will focus on implementing transportation demand management elements of the Innovate 680 project along the I-680 corridor from Walnut Creek to San Ramon. Mobility on Demand funding will cover the cost of the systems engineering for the micromobility assets, and then how we integrate the mod into the Mobility on Demand application. Funding for all micromobility stations, such as bike stations and bike devices and ongoing operations, is not provided in the grant, and I'll explain a little bit of that later on. The Transportation Authority has worked with all of the jurisdictions along the I-680 corridor to fund micromobility operations using Air District Transportation Fund for Clean Air and/or Measure J funding. So what is Mobility on Demand, or MOD? It's actually ultimately the Innovate 680 program is going to develop an app. The app will provide residents and commuters in this part of Contra Costa County with trip planning, trip scheduling. We will integrate payment options on the app. We will be able to receive real-time information for BART, buses. We will be able to provide rewards and incentives for those individuals who carpool or vanpool or ride their bike share. They'll be able to sign up for rewards and incentives. And then there will be a number of connection protection devices within the mod application. The mod application is actually scheduled for deployment in 2023. In the meantime, we're working on the bike share component, which I'm going to talk about briefly. So the mobility on demand mobility assets will include a bike share and other micromobility devices that will provide essentially first and last mile solutions along the I-680 corridor, focusing on the trips between Walnut Creek and San Ramon. The devices are envisioned that they will be stationed at BART stations and other transit hubs, such as the San Ramon Transit Center. Micro-mobility will create connections to transit and large job centers, specifically here in the city Bishop Ranch Business Park, and then from residential developments in East San Ramon to West San Ramon to and from the transit center. Ultimately, the city will engage in an electric bike share program that will include the town of Danville, San Ramon, Contra Costa County unincorporated area, or Alamo. And the devices will be available along the Iron Horse Trail, as an example, to and from BART stations. So there's been a significant amount of planning that has taken place since last November with the Contra Costa Transportation Authority and all of these stakeholders, including the town of Danville, East Bay Regional the East Bay Regional Parks District, the Bay Area Bike advocacy groups, and the city of Walnut Creek, the city of San Ramon, and the unincorporated area of Contra Costa County. So we've identified the potential micro-mobility vendors. There are about 5 vendors that we have identified that would be able to produce the equipment needed for the micro-mobility project. There's a stakeholder group that I just mentioned that's been completed. We have already sought feedback on user needs for micromobility. The Transportation Authority is starting to work on the systems engineering of the micromobility assets and the app development, which I mentioned earlier. That app should be developed in the year 2023. We've developed vendor requirements for the micromobility vendors. The authority has met with all the jurisdictions about our needs and the schedule along the corridor. We have procured a shared micromobility vendor that's actually in progress now. I'll talk briefly about that in just a moment. And then here in San Ramon, we're planning for program rollout in the fall of this year through winter of next year. The entire program along the I-680 corridor for Danville and Walnut Creek, the program rollout will be spring of next year, and then the app will roll out late 2022 and early 2023. So preparing for a bike share program here in San Ramon, the Transportation Authority released a request for information, or RFI, on September 10th. That RFI is out now. The deadline to submit questions on the RFI has already passed, September 17th. They had not received any questions on the RFI. The Transportation Authority was going to respond to questions by September 22nd, which is tomorrow. Since they haven't received any questions, they have not prepared any responses. The deadline to submit responses to the RFI is October 1st. And then additional meetings will take place the week of October 11th with the vendors if those are needed. And those will all be facilitated by the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. So while we've been working on developing the RFI to secure vendors for the bike share program, a parallel track is we've been working with the Transportation Authority to develop a memorandum of understanding, or MOU, between San Ramon and the Transportation Authority. San Ramon is going to be the lead agency to kick off the bike share program. So we will be the first agency to launch the micromobility or the bike share program. It'll be followed by the town of Danville, Alamo, and then the city of Walnut Creek. There is a desire to form an executive steering committee. That steering committee will serve as the policy and financial advisory body for the program. Then we will have a pilot leadership team, or PLT. They will serve as the primary management body for the pilot program, and those staff members will be authorized to direct the pilot activity within the bounds set forth by the executive steering committee. And then lastly, there is a pilot deployment team, or PDT. That team will be responsible to work with the vendor on the day-to-day operations and the delivery of the pilot project. That team will be focused mainly with San Ramon staff and authority staff members at the beginning. We will incorporate Walnut Creek and Danville staff later on as the program evolves to those jurisdictions. So the next steps, we are going to forward the MOU to City Council for review and approval. That's scheduled for the second meeting in October to City Council. We will execute the MOU between the City of San Ramon and the Transportation Authority. We will present an update on this pilot bike share program to the Transportation Advisory Committee and the TDM Advisory Committee. In concert with the Transportation Authority, by October, we should procure a vendor for the program, and then we will work with the Transportation Authority to roll out the pilot project in early winter, spring of next year. That provides you with the summary of where we are with the bike share program and the mobility on demand application. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for the presentation. Vice Chair Armstrong, any questions?
Yeah, the only question I had really that came to mind was, this is just a portion of the overall mod, I see, but will this information or this new program get somehow wrapped into the bicycle master plan that we have for the city, or is it kind of two standalone type things?
Very good question. It's actually a component of the bike master plan. Within the bicycle master plan, we call for the future of a bike share program. So this actually responds to what is outlined in the bicycle master plan. Fortunately, because it's a cooperative effort with the Transportation Authority and the authority has received grant funds, the majority of the funding will come from the grants and the Transportation Authority rather than the City of San Ramon.
Okay, thanks. I knew you were all over
Okay. You're welcome.
it. That's the only, I've got some comments, but that's the only question I've got.
Thank you, Vice Chair Armstrong. Now I'll open the public comment. To comment, please click the raise your hand button or *9 on your telephone to request to speak. When it is your turn, you will be unmuted to make your comment for up to 3 minutes. After the allotted time, you will then be muted. Written comments submitted were provided to the committee prior to the start of this meeting and made a part of the public record. Written public comment will no longer be read aloud during the meeting. Madam Clerk, anybody for public comment?
We have 2 requests to speak. The first one is call-in user 1.
Bring in.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I would like to, okay, thank you. I would like to request the chair and the vice chair to please postpone the signing of the memorandum for the following questions and reasons that I did not feel the presentation had covered, but were very important to the quality of life, safety, and the overall cleanliness and health of our city. Number one, I'm not sure if this operation means we own the bikes or we're just allowing business operation of those potential vendors that Ms. Bobadilla had vetted to operate here in our city as one of the quote unquote stations for these bikes. I don't think I was clear on that. The nature of this kind of operation, is it ownership on our city's part, or we're just a like a station? Number two, link to the BART means people who live in San Francisco or Oakland can come to our city, including the homeless people. So I'm wondering, what is our city's policy or preparedness plan to deal with migration of homeless population from those cities, or even, God forbid, murderers or criminals that will be coming to our city because of this plan? It wasn't covered in the presentation. And also, I didn't hear any touch up on the budget that we have to additionally set up to clean up trash or illegal dumping of garbage by the visitors. And also, there was no coverage on medical emergency readiness or preparedness. I'm not sure if somebody all of a sudden, two bikes running into each other, there's somebody who is bleeding or passing out due to like a long trip of riding the bikes. How are we going to rescue them? Obviously, they're on the trails. How is our emergency vehicles going to access these patients? And lastly, because the presentation documentation had touched up on, a technology related type of link, meaning like, they can tell where the location of the bikes are, or, that kind of thing. I'm wondering then, what about law enforcement? Do you have any plans to maybe launch drone enforcement? So if somebody is like illegally dumping and you can actually see it, the drone can actually speak to them and say, you're illegally dumping right now and you will be fined. How are you also going to enforce penalty if they should be dumping or violating our city codes? How are you going to enforce our laws? Because all those things were not touched upon. I request that Ms. Bobadilla or pertinent departments to go back and gather this information and then present at the next policy meeting. Then maybe a more vetted or researched memorandum can be submitted for the council to sign. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker.
Next hand raised is Joyce Carr.
Joyce, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm joining the meeting here today, and this is the first that I've heard of this. I try to keep up on all the things that are going on in the city, but I missed this one. So anyway, my question is just a real quick question here. Is there going to be I don't think there'd be a bike lane on 680, but is there going to be a bike trail, a continuous trail that goes between San Ramon and Walnut Creek? It's a real simple question here, because I don't know all the particulars. Do you understand what I'm asking? Is there a trail that people ride bikes on to get around, or is it on the freeway? Or I just want to know where the bikes would be ridden.
Lisa, if you have answered, that's fine. We can update. Otherwise, Joyce can email you and you can reply to the email.
I can certainly respond, or I can reply to an email, but the bikes there will not be a specific trail designated. The bikes will use the existing bicycle network. So it's either bike lanes here at the city, or it's the Iron Horse Trail. So the bikes will only be allowed to access bicycle lanes, bicycle paths here at the city, and or the Iron Horse Trail.
Yeah. Okay. And this is all just to make it easier for people to get from point A from point B without having to be on 680 and the crowds and all the cars and everything.
Yeah, and the first phase of the program is really to provide first and last mile. So if you are coming into work and you're on BART and you ride the bus and you're getting off at the Santa Monica Transit Center, you can ride the bike to either City Center or to a different location. So it's really, ultimately, that's the goal, is to provide the first and last mile.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, now I understand. Okay. Now make me understand what's going on here. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. I think there is no more public comments. So with that, I'm going to close the public comment. Vice Chair Armstrong, please provide your recommendations or feedback.
Yeah, well, I do have a couple comments. You know, we did get a briefing on the whole mobility on demand system as part of the whole Innovate 680 system this earlier in the year. We got a very good presentation on that, and I noticed that same little diagram that had that circular diagram that had all of the different types of functions. So this, as I understand it, this is just going to focus on kind of the micro mobility aspect of the bike aspect that at this time, and then we'll kind of finish up with the rest of it here by 2023, as I heard in the presentation. So I know it's kind of overused, but we often hear it's like building a plane in flight. I kind of feel that's kind of what we're doing here. We're gonna create this as part of this Innovate 680. We're going to do this mobility on demand, and we're going to work on this bicycle piece of it for the time being. I do, I think we all recognize traffic is a concern along 680. So I think it's smart. There's a lot of things that we're doing as part of that Innovate 680 program. And I certainly do acknowledge that there's something that has to be done for the first mile and the last mile. So I think this is a good step in the right direction to address that. And I think it does address it in a way that our community will use these systems, the e-bikes and the regular bikes, scooters, trikes, those kinds of things. I will say safety is a bit of a concern. We heard that from one of the call-in users. I will say that my son recently in San Francisco, a month ago, he was on a scooter, had an accident, wasn't wearing a helmet, and he got a traumatic brain injury and concussion and some fractures in the face and things like that. So, and he's recovering well. He's back to work now and everything else. But so safety is a concern so I do kind of worry about, access onto our trail system and things like that, the transitions and that sort of thing. Even my wife, 2 weeks ago, my wife and I were riding our bikes on Iron Horse Trail. She had a bike accident and broke her wrist. So it's been a bad month for the Armstrong family. But so bike safety gets my attention. But so as long as we're doing the right things to kind of take safety into consideration, I think it's really important. And also parking spaces. I think one of the things I noticed walking around San Francisco, and I've seen scooters and e-bikes and other things in the city, or in some places, these devices can just be, people will just leave them anywhere. And then they become a kind of a hazard along the pathway. And so I know that there are systems. So I hope our vendor has some kind of a system that where sort of that drop-off point is in a sort of a designated bubble, a certain area where there's sort of some accountability that either they will continue to get charged until they bring it to one of those parking areas or something. So it's not just left anywhere. I know that's probably a vendor responsibility, but what we don't want to see is these devices left all over the place. In particular, I don't think we want to see them left on, say, in the middle of a trail or in the middle of a sidewalk or a place that can encumber or prevent passage of our persons who are in wheelchairs or elderly trying to walk along the trails and things like that. So to me, parking and this pickup point and this drop-off point are very important for the vendor to figure that out and work with the city on where those places are. And then I think we got to kind of work through, or at least make it clear, kind of who's who in terms of liability for if the devices get stolen or badly damaged. There's a kind of usually a cashless system for this, whether it's a credit card or some other method of payment, but making sure that information isn't able to be compromised, that it's kind of it's done and it's gone, it's not retained somehow on that system. And then also that in our agreement that somehow the city is indemnified, so that we're not liable for potential damages or injury. Overall, I agree with the next steps that were presented in the staff report. Perhaps maybe go into a little bit more detail on some of the things that I mentioned, but if nothing else, just to know that those things are being addressed or have at least been considered in that memorandum between the city and CCTA, or all the vendors and things like that. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, Vice Chair Armstrong. Thank you, Lisa, once again for the presentation. So I think I'm really excited about this program. I think this is a very revolutionizing way of how people are going to move within the city. And also I think this is going to be a key for public transport alternative programs where people are using public transport nowadays. When I see our buses or the huge rideshare transportation with only few people sitting in that, so that always makes me think that, hey, why we are wasting so many resources? Because this program, I think it is not just solve one or two problems, but this is a multifold problem solver. I think it's about the transportation for the public, and the second thing is about the traffic issues that we are facing within the city, and also about the pollution wise. We can reduce pollution when we encourage more and more residents to utilize this public transportation, alternate public transportation. And many more. I think there are many more benefits that are going to come with this one. So I'm very glad and excited. So one thing regarding the safety, as myself a motorcycle rider, we do go through some education, then training, then license and all that. So I would like to see if we can provide some public education on this one, so that they understand what to do and not to do, and how they can be safely ride this. Like Vice Chair Armstrong mentioned about accident, right? So in his family, with his son, the same thing, anybody can face, because I escaped multiple accidents while I'm riding my motorbike, because I do see people riding with nowadays, especially it's very dangerous. People use a lot of mobile devices while they're driving. So if we can add some education, not some, but I think we should add education about some videos or some programs where we can advise them how to be safe. That should be our top priority, I think. Okay, but otherwise, I'm really excited about this whole program. I'm looking forward for this.
Yeah. If I could just add just another comment there, just to touch on the safety aspect of it. I notice most of the bicyclists just riding bikes around town. Most of them are wearing helmets and doing a pretty good job of that. They're leaving from home and that sort of thing. I think my concern is a lot of the people that might use are these kind of rent-a-bikes, if you will, the micro mobility on demand. they might be coming from the offices and things like that, or coming off of BART and that sort of thing. So unless they, as Chair Veros mentioned, unless we have a good education campaign, bring a helmet, wear a helmet, and that sort of thing, then, we're liable to see a lot more people without helmets riding these devices. I still am a big supporter of this. I think it's a great idea. I think it's kind of long overdue that we have something like this in the city. I think we actually tried this a while ago in the city, but yeah, just concerned about the safety piece, but I don't think that's a showstopper. I think we can address that, have education, and ultimately move forward with this.
Thank you, Vice Chair Armstrong. With that, we are going to item number 6, policy committee comments. Vice Chair Armstrong, any comments?
No, I've got nothing further to add than the discussion already.
Sounds good. And I don't have any comments on that. Do we need to open any more? Oh, okay. So with that, I think we can adjourn the call. Thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Yeah.